Hello everyone, how's it going? Billy Ballgame here, back with another video. On this channel, I'm just a dude who loves to talk about baseball cards. And today, I want to talk about something that I struggle with frequently within the hobby, and I think that probably some of you have this same struggle. And the struggle for me is the question of quantity versus quality, or a quantity of quality. So I love baseball cards, right? Um, in a lot of ways, I'm like a woman in a shoe store. I've never met a baseball card I didn't like. And I've said this before on my channel. I really do think that I could have $1 million a month budget or $1 million a year budget. Either way, it doesn't matter. And I could probably still die with baseball cards that I didn't have that I want to add to my collection. And I'm kind of cursed in some ways. I'm a completionist. And really what I'm hoping to do is complete, I love rookie cards, right? So eventually I would like to get the vast majority of the post-war rookie Hall of Famers or Hall of Fame rookie cards. I would also like to do Hall of Fame player runs, the ones that I can afford. Mickey Mantle I will probably never complete. Willie Mays I will probably never complete. But the guys that are reasonable, Yastrzemski, I already have the Hank Aaron rookie, so of course Hank Aaron, Nolan Ryan, guys like that. So for me, that involves basically collecting all the Hall of Famers cards from, similar to Mike, Baseball Collectors 4 Decades set, where he's working on the 50s, 60s, 70s, and 80s. Like that eventually at some point, I think is the goal for me within my collection. And my buddy Chris from Missouri is doing something very similar, except Chris goes by player, whereas Mike goes by year. But the question I struggle with, and it's a constant battle, is on how to spend my monthly allowance. Do I go for a quality card? I can buy one really nice baseball card every month. Or, again, this kind of ties into my last video, do I get a bunch of stuff that I already have in my collection graded? Or do I buy more quantity type of cards to plug in holes of players that I like? And so that's kind of a constant back and forth in my brain that I go through. And so really kind of what spurred this on, today is Monday, the 24th of February as I'm filming this video. And happy birthday to Eddie Murray. One of the greatest switch hitters in the history of baseball and highly underrated within the hobby. Only Mickey Mantle hit more switch hit home runs than he did. And there are only 2 of them that have hit more than 500 home runs in their career. But really what made me kind of lean into this train of thought is I was down at my buddy Tom's house yesterday down in Jefferson City. And Tom and I collect very similarly as well. Tom is a completionist also. And the biggest difference, well, there are a lot of differences between my collection right now and Tom's collection, but the biggest difference on where we're at and where we're wanting to go with our collection is Tom has a much larger quantity of cards than I do, especially graded. And he's got a lot more quality. And Tom is a year or 2 older than I am. And a big bulk of his raw stuff, his ungraded stuff that he's looking to get graded for his collection are cards from the 70s. Whereas for me, I have a big bulk of cards from the 80s. And so him and I were talking about it yesterday, again, that constant teeter-totter between quality versus quantity, because both of us are spending a substantial amount of money to get cards graded, that we already have in our collection. And it's one of those questions we ask ourselves: do I buy a big card this month, or do I get a bunch of cards graded? And the right answer to that question is, and some of you will tell me this, and you did in my last video, and it's great advice, is do what makes you happy. And again, that's great advice, but the problem with that is again, I love baseball cards, and I'm a completionist. And so it's not quite always that clear cut to me. And I'm kind of just, again, thinking out loud, maybe asking a rhetorical question. But Tom is getting a lot of his cards from the 70s graded. And once he gets those done, he'll have the bulk of the cards of all the Hall of Famers from the 70s finished. And so we were talking about that yesterday, and I told him that if I got all the cards from the 80s that I have in my collection that are, air quotes, worth grading, because some of you will say none of them are worth grading, I could probably be 70 or 80% complete with all the graded cards of Hall of Famers that I want in my collection. So I have talked about selling stuff from the 80s and using it to buy stuff from the 50s and start working my way forward. And I thought about doing that, but to me, it's like, why sell them if I already have them and I'm just going to end up buying them back again later? So right now, this week, right now, this very minute, I think what I'm going to do is focus on the 80s until I get the vast majority of these knocked out, and then I'll just methodically work my way back. I'm going to continue to work on the 60 set. I'm going to continue to pick up Hall of Fame rookie cards when I find them for a good price. I'm going to continue to buy Ozzie Smith cards and King Griffey Jr. and Albert Pujols and all those guys, but my problem within my collection again is figuring out how to stay focused, how to get the best bang for my buck within my collection, and how to get where I want to be within my collection in the shortest amount of time, because I'm kind of impatient, and with the most money when I get there. So I'm going to show you some cards that fall into two different categories. And the problem with it is I love both of them, and they both make me happy. So I'm going to start out with some quantity, and then I'm going to show you what I consider quality. And these are, again, are cards that I already have in my collection. And this was a long, winding intro. I hope I didn't lose you all. But again, I think that I'm not the only one that struggles with this, that there are others out there that struggle with this too, because we can't just go out all at once and buy all the cards that we want for our collection. And collecting is a marathon, not a sprint. But again, for me, with my budget every month, which I'm grateful and happy to have, it's a constant back and forth. Do I buy a big card this month, or do I send stuff in to get graded, or do I buy stuff for my Ozzie run, or do I buy a Pujols rookie card, or do I buy more King Griffey Jr. cards? So I have a lot of irons in the fire with my collecting budget. But I love cards like this. 81 Fleer Harold Baines rookie card, right? Like, this was a $20 card that I bought from my buddy Coop at a Columbia card show. And like him or not, Harold Baines is a Hall of Famer. Shout out to my buddy Jason from Everyday Card Collector, the best Hall of Famer ever, that he says in jest. But this is a great card, and it's a Hall of Fame rookie card. And I love it. Here's a 77 Topps, Andre Dawson. Again, another Hall of Fame rookie card. You guys know that I love rookie cards, right? Like I said it in the intro, I've never met a baseball card that I didn't like. Some I like more than some I like more than others, but I've never seen a baseball card that I thought, I absolutely hate that card. It's the most ridiculous thing ever get it out of my face. I've never thought that about a baseball card. So as you all know, I love Ozzie Smith. So here's an 84 Donruss Ozzie Smith. And this is one of the best, most amazing, most iconic sets from the 80s. And I don't have enough of them. Like, I would love to have a complete set of 84 Donruss. I am fortunate enough to have a set of 82 Topps, and this comes out of the 82 Topps traded set. But this is another amazing card that is Ozzie's first card in a Cardinal uniform. Another amazing card, 85 Topps, Ozzie Smith. I'm fortunate enough to have this complete set. Unfortunately, most of the ones that came out of the set are really, really off-centered and not in the greatest condition overall. And for me, my OCD, and it's not that I don't like 5s and 6s, because I do, my OCD will not allow me to have a card from the 80s in a 5 or 6 in my collection. And it's not because they're worthless, right? They're awesome, and I love them too. But for me, there are so many of these cards out there, and so many of these cards were produced in the 80s, that they're cheap in high grades, in 8s, 9s, and 10s. A lot of them aren't super expensive. So if I can get a nice high eye appeal version of a card of a player I really like in an 8, 9, or 10 for not a whole lot of money, then why not do that? And because there are so many of these that were produced in the 80s, and I'm not an investor, but if there's any chance of these cards ever appreciating in value, it's going to be in high grades. It's going to be in 9s and 10s, and in some cases, we've already seen it with like Ricky Henderson and Cal Ripken Jr.'s 82 Topps traded. In some cases, 8s. So that's why I like high-graded cards in my collection from the 80s and newer. It's not because I'm a grading snob. It's just they're cheap. So if I can buy an 84 Topps Ozzie Smith that's a mint card for 20 bucks, then why would I not buy that? But again, I love these cards. And here's one I bought in an 8 because I didn't want to pay $40 or $50 for a 9. But again, another great card. 75 Topps, Carl Yastrzemski, another awesome card. This one was 20 bucks. But if you want to do player runs, if you're a completionist like I am, this is a card that you have to have. Especially, I love Carl Yastrzemski. So 20 bucks for this, right? So again, it's hard for me to pass up on stuff like this when I see it. Here's a 71 Topps Willie McCovey. So again, these are quality cards in my mind, right? Like, this is a quantity of quality. Lou Brock, 73 Topps in a 7.5 that I got from my buddy Tom. But for every card like this, that's less money that I'm saving to potentially buy a bigger card. 84 Donruss Nolan Ryan. Again, Nolan Ryan's one of my favorite players of all time. 84 Donruss Mike Schmidt. I actually paid more for shipping on this card than I did for the card. This card, I think it's still the case. If you go on VCP and you look up at the latest comp on this card, I think it's $1.99. And if it's not the latest one, it's one of the most recent. That was the minimum bid for this card, and I bid $1.99 for this card and then paid like $8, $10 shipping. So the latest comp is $1.99 for an 84 Donruss Mike Schmidt. I would like to think that it's worth a little bit more than that. But again, if you like, Mike Schmidt is probably the best third baseman of all time. Like, there aren't very many people that would be even arguable on whether or not they're better than Mike Schmidt. Maybe just a few. Brooks Robinson's one that I can think of. But how can you be a baseball card collector and a huge baseball fan and remembering what an iconic, amazing player Mike Schmidt was and not want an 84 Donruss Mike Schmidt, right? So again, I want all of them because I love baseball cards. The original Pudge, 78 Topps Carlton Fisk, again, like a $20 card for 78 Topps of a top 5 or 6 best catcher of all time. Like, I can't turn this stuff down when I find it. And maybe that's why I don't have more quality in my collection. But to me, in some cases, quantity is just as cool as quality. And so again, I struggle quite frequently on balancing all these irons in the fire, juggling all these balls. I have all these balls in the air that I'm juggling all the time within my collection. And it's not stressful. It shouldn't be stressful, right? This is a hobby that I love. That's a whole lot of fun. But it's like, okay, well, this is a card that I paid $20 for ungraded back in 2007, 6, somewhere around there, and then spent $30 to grade it. So $50, it's now worth about 20. But still, it's Nolan Ryan, one of my favorite players of all time. And so, is this quality or is this quantity? I don't know. What I do know is this is definitely, I would consider, quality. And again, I love Lou Brock. I love rookie cards, Hall of Fame rookie card of one of the all-time Cardinal greats. Like, how can I not have this in my collection? But there are a lot of these types of cards that I don't have in my collection that I would like to add at some point. And my buddy Justin from Go Crazy Card Collecting, him and I were talking recently, and he's like, you kind of obsess over those 80s cards, don't you? And I do. Like, that was my prime era of ripping packs when I was a kid. So out of everything within the hobby, those cards have the most nostalgia tied to them for me because I remember pulling those out of packs. And so for me, I will always have a certain level of appreciation for cards from the 80s, even though there's not a lot of value there. Like, I commented recently on a video John Mangini did, are you a collector or are you an investor or something like that? And I was like, I have way too many 88 Donruss cards in my collection to be considered an investor. But I love those. They're ugly. They're one of the worst looking sets ever made, but I remember opening them. They were the first large amount of non-Topps cards that we opened when I was a kid because we couldn't find Fleer and Donruss very often until 1988, pretty much the peak of the junk wax era, and I bought a boatload of it. And they would get chipped up and banged up corners just putting them in penny sleeves back then. So my thought is, once I can get, and I have the vast majority of sets complete from the 80s. There's probably 5 or 6 that I don't have. But my thought is, maybe once I get the vast majority of these cards that I want from the 80s in my collection graded, then I won't obsess over them anymore. I'll have all the ones that I want, and then I can move into the 70s and start making some progress in my collection. And I guess that's part of this whole rambling chaos of a video like I so frequently do, is sometimes I feel like I spin my wheels in my collection and I'm not really making progress and getting where I want to get. But a big part of that is because I have so many irons in the fire. And a big part of why I have so many irons in the fire is because I love baseball cards. And it's a good problem to have, right? That none of this is a complaint. Please, none of you take it that way. I'm just trying to find some method to my madness and try to create order out of chaos because I'm an analytical dude. I like planning. I like thinking and analyzing and having a method and a process. And the more I get into it, the more I get into the hobby, the less of a process I have and the more stuff that I want. Like my buddy Tom has a Mike Bossy rookie card in an SGC 9 that I would love to get from him. And I told him yesterday, let me know what you want for this if you decide you want to sell it, and I'd be happy to buy it off of you. But I love hockey. I love hockey rookie cards. I love old school NBA basketball, like from the, I don't know, pre-2020 or so, or pre-2000. Like, I want all those Hall of Fame iconic rookie cards. Same way with football. I don't have the same level of obsession over those other sports. Like, as much as I love Brett Hull and Wayne Gretzky, like, I don't want to do a Wayne Gretzky player run. Like, I want to have his rookie card at some point, but I'm not going to do a Wayne Gretzky player run. I'll do a Hank Aaron player run. There's no doubt about it that I'm going to do one. It's just a matter of when. So I love baseball cards. I love football cards, hockey cards, basketball cards. How do I put a method to all this madness and all this chaos? And so I think, at least right now anyway, I think I'm going to work on the 80s pretty diligently until something else, well, until I change my mind. Or if I'm at a show and I find a Harmon Killebrew rookie card that I don't have, that's a nice looking one, that's within the budget, I won't hesitate to buy that, because it's still a card that I'm going to want to get at some point in my collection, and hopefully fairly soon, right? But I want everything soon, and I want everything now, and that's unfortunately not how things work. So, rhetorical question, once again, just trying to put a method to my madness, because here recently, again, I was going to start selling stuff from the 80s and newer so I could quickly start knocking out some of these iconic all-time great Hall of Fame rookie cards like Roberto Clemente and Sandy Koufax and Ernie Banks and stuff like that through the 50s, all the ones that I can afford. But then it's like, okay, then I have the ones from the 50s. Do I start going back into the 40s and getting some of those that I can afford? The Stan Musials and the Yogi Berras and the Ralph Kiners and stuff like that. So I figure this way I'm not jumping back and forth. I'll just start with 1989, and work my way back. And then if it's after 1989, unless it's King Griffey Jr. or Ozzie Smith or Nolan Ryan, some of the guys that I really care about, I'm just going to get their rookie cards. Because in the 90s, there are so many different sets that if I tried to get every card, every base card even, of every Hall of Famer throughout the 90s, like, I would never get finished with that. So this way, if I work on the 80s, finish those up, work on the 70s, finish those up, work on the 60s, then back to the 50s, back to the 40s, and then eventually, at some point, pre-war stuff, because I love pre-war. I don't want to go down the pre-war rabbit hole yet when there's so much post-war stuff that I want. That way I'm working in one direction. I'm working backwards in time. I'm not jumping back and forth all over the place all the time. So let me know if you struggle with the question, quality over quantity, or do you want a quantity of quality? I think that's really what we all want within our collections. I think we want a quantity of quality with whatever our budget allows us to afford within our collection. And I think that's what we're all working to. For me, I just like to have a method to my madness, because sometimes I really get overwhelmed when I think about the sheer volume of cards that I want in my collection. And the fact that, again, I could have $1 million a year budget and they would pat my belly with a shovel, and there would still be cards that I wanted to add to my collection and just never got to. So I figure this way it flows and it has an order to it. So again, I'm just kind of thinking out loud based off a conversation I had with my buddy Tom yesterday and some other conversations I've had throughout the last year or so with other collectors in the hobby. So hope you enjoyed this video. I hope it wasn't too rambling and incoherent, but let me know what your thoughts are in the comments below. Do you go for quantity over quality? Do you go for a quality of quantity? I think I said that right. Or do you just, are you like me where you obsess over baseball cards and you love so many of them that you want all of them? Like even non-Hall of Famers, like I really want a Dwight Evans rookie card. Um, I have Willie McGee rookie cards. I have Vince Coleman rookie cards. So for me, it's not just all about the Hall of Famers, and that makes my list even bigger because then there are more amazing cards of non-Hall of Famers that I want to add to my collection. I want Curt Flood rookies. I want Vada Pinson rookies, and luckily they're not too expensive. I just love baseball cards, and so again, let me know what your thoughts are in the comments below, and I will go ahead and wrap up this inherent or incoherent babbling mess of randomness. And I wanted to congratulate my buddies. Joe at Redneck Collector just recently passed 400 subscribers, and my buddy Justin at Go Crazy Card Collecting is getting really close to 400 subscribers. And I know the president, John Mangini, gave a shout out of my buddy Justin's channel and linked one of his videos, and that provided a tremendous boost to his channel. And I'm pretty sure he did the same thing for my buddy Joe at Redneck Collector. And so thank you, John, too, for taking care of the newer guys, the smaller channels that have just started out in YouTube, and helping them get more involved in the YouTube card community. So thanks, John. Congrats, Justin. Congrats, Joe. I think that's all I want to babble about today, so I'll go ahead and wrap it up at that. Oh, my SGC order is down in Boca, ready for SGC to pick it up. Hopefully they'll do that tomorrow and get it checked in here in the next couple days. It took a week to get down to Florida in bad weather. I paid for 3-day shipping, and it took a week to get down there. So hopefully it starts moving through the process here pretty soon. I can't wait to get those back and show you all the grades and all that good stuff. So I hope everybody has a good one, and until the next one, I'll talk to you later.